Week 3 is over and there's a lot that we need to cover. Specifically the players who had standout performances and which of these guys we want to prioritize on the waiver wire this week. So these are the players that you need to add to your roster before week 4. And we can start with the guy who had an absolutely big week 3. It was Devon Achane, and it kind of came out of nowhere after being a healthy scratch week 1. And then in week 2, the rookie Achane plays just 5 snaps, operates as the running back 3, as you can see right here on Fantasy Life. But in week 3, he saw more usage because Salvon Ahmed was out. And this usage was specifically Achane playing 41% of the snaps, easily a season high, and he did a lot with this. He scored the most points on the entire week out of any single position, putting up over 230 total yards on 22 touches, 4 total TDs. Obviously in this offense, there's a ton of explosive plays, and he accounted for a lot of them. And his 41% of the snaps probably would have been even more because there was a blowout, so he didn't play like the final half of the final quarter of this game. It was actually Chris Brooks comes in and sees 13 snaps. He also had a lot of yards, playing 17% of the snaps. So Achane was basically going to split this backfield even with Raheem Mostert. Now Mostert, you can see he started the game, played the most snaps, but on the second drive and then all throughout the rest of the game, they were mixing in just kind of 50-50. I mean, Mostert himself had a great game. He was the 3rd overall scoring player on the slate behind only Achane and Keenan Allen. The moral of the story here is Miami is scheming up a ton of explosive plays because of the speed they have on this team, and linebackers and cornerbacks just can't keep up. And this includes the top 1% speed according to Player Profiler from Devon Achane, who ran the fastest 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine amongst any running back. So expect him to stay involved with explosive plays and still split this backfield. But the interesting thing was he actually saw more short yardage and goal line usage than Mostert. Now Jeff Wilson will return in a few weeks and Raheem Mostert's still there, but if Devon Achane is seeing legit snaps in this offense, you need to add it. And the big concern coming out of college for Achane was that he's just 5'9" and 188 pounds. Despite being a nice pass catcher and massive producer in college, well, he put these smaller size concerns to rest in week 3. And the funny thing is this next guy is also massively undersized. And it hasn't mattered through 3 games because like the 165-pound wide receiver Nathaniel Dell looks to be the wide receiver 1 for the Texans. Now last week in week 2, we talked about him in the same video, but he's still available in over 60% of leagues. He played 82% of the routes. That's what he ran because there was no Noah Brown, and he led the team with a 23% target share. That was 10 targets. So he operated last week basically as the wide receiver 1. He ran more routes than Nico Collins. And then this week that continued. He ran 2 more routes than Nico Collins, was in there more often on 2 wide receiver sets, and again earned more targets than Nico. And here's the proof right here. 26 routes run for Tank Dell to 24 for Nico Collins. 1 more target was earned in this game for Tank Dell, and he probably would have saw even more usage if it wasn't for a blowout late in the game. And look, Dell was a big reason for this blowout because he had a 68-yard touchdown in the second half. So this rookie who had a strong preseason showing and had back-to-back college seasons of 1,300 yards is now producing yet again. That's all he's done when he's touched the field, and right now he's the wide receiver 1 for the Texans and the #1 priority add at the position. And a big reason for his success is because his quarterback has been great. And his quarterback is indeed the 1st-round pick, CJ Stroud, who despite being behind an offensive line with 3 to 4 starters down for the first month of the season so far, has looked really good. So much so that he's thrown for the 3rd most yards, averaging over 300 yards a game in his first 3 games as a rookie. Again, the only guys better than that, Justin Herbert and Cam Newton. Now, he came into this game as a 9-point underdog and ends up winning by 20 points and averaging over 9 yards per attempt. The NFL average is like 7 yards per attempt. That's how good he was. Now, CJ Stroud and the Texans still do project to trail in most of their games this season, which is only going to lead to more pass attempts for him. That's going to help Tank Dell, who we just talked about, and obviously will help CJ Stroud, who currently is a top 10 quarterback, but he's on your waiver wire. He is worth an add, especially if you don't have a great option right now. Now let's go to a wide receiver who just became a much better option for you. And if you're enjoying this content, make sure to hit the subscribe button to see all my future videos. Now that wide receiver who just got a boost is Josh Palmer because Mike Williams left in the second half of that massive crazy game between the Vikings and the Chargers, and it looks pretty serious. The early reports right now from multiple sources, and one of them is Sports MD Analysis on Twitter. You can see right here, the video suggests an ACL and MCL/meniscus potential tear there. The best case scenario would be a sprain, and even then he's going to miss 2 to 4 weeks. So Josh Palmer is going to be the wide receiver 2 now for maybe at least the next month, maybe the entire season, and for the whole year he's been a starter. Through the first 2 weeks, Palmer ran 69% of the routes, as you can see right here. He wasn't really earning targets at a massive clip, only 6 targets on the season. That's 8% of them, but now he's going to have to see more routes and more snaps. That should only lead to more targets. And he actually had a nice game in week 3, but it was kind of hard not to with so many points going around, and this was a little fluky. If you watch this game, he did score a deep touchdown, but it kind of hit off of his defender and just fell into his hands, so it really wasn't because of anything he did. But according to PFF, once Mike Williams left left the game, it was Palmer seeing 11 of the 13 snaps in 2 wide receiver sets with Keenan Allen operating as a true starter with Justin Herbert. So Palmer is the priority add from this situation with Mike Williams expected, at least as of right now, to miss some time and maybe the entire year. Another option from this wide receiver core to at least consider, especially if you're in a deeper league, is going to be Quentin Johnson, who is their first round pick out of TCU. Now, Johnson was considered the best big receiver at 6'3" and 208 pounds. This was a smaller wide receiver class. Now, his best season in college was last year. He produced nearly 1,100 yards and ranked top 10 in broken tackle rate. And this is his best ability that he's known for, yards after the catch because of broken tackles. But the concerns for Johnson was that his drops. I mean, he had a lot of drops in the preseason. You can see right here, he's made some amazing plays, but he also had more drops and touchdown receptions last year in college. But now he's going to see more snaps and routes with Mike Williams out. He's going to have to join the starting rotation. He might even earn the wide receiver 2 job over Josh Palmer, depending on how they like his size. It's kind of a 1-for-1 replacement with Mike Williams as time goes on. So Johnson's worth an add in deeper leagues, but Tajay Spears, you kind of need to add this guy in every single league. That's a 12-man league and deeper for sure. And if you have a couple bench spots open, a 10-man league as well, Mr. Tajay Spears. Because in week 1, if you remember, he actually led the team playing 56% of the snaps, more snaps than Derrick Henry. And then in week 2, his snaps went back down to being a backup running back because it was a closer game where they could run the ball more with Henry. But in week 3, the snaps flipped again as the Titans trailed for the majority of the game. You could see here, Tajay Spears plays 27 snaps, just 17 for Derrick Henry. This translated to 57% of the snaps for Spears and just 36% of the snaps for the stud in Derrick Henry. The takeaway here is that Derrick Henry in the past, even in games where they were trailing by a lot, he would stay on the field, get a couple of screen passes, maybe a couple more carries and a touchdown, so he was a safe play, but now that's no longer the case. The Titans coaches clearly trust the rookie in Tajay Spears, and he has some elite traits. His burst is top 10% of all time tested at the NFL Combine, and look at this right here. He was productive in college, averaging nearly 7 yards per carry, and over his final 8 college games, he had 125 or more yards in all of them. So he's worth an add in all leagues before he becomes an obvious name like some of the guys like a Jerome Ford have been recently. And now maybe some of these guys are actually already off the waiver wire in your league, but don't worry. Towards the end of the video, we're going to go through all of the potential plays you can add on a huge list. Now, we've been talking about Luke Musgrave a lot, but he's still available in over 70, close to 80% of leagues right now, despite the fact that he continues to run 80% of the routes for the Packers. And a reminder, tight ends who run 80% of the routes finish as top 12 options. And what did he do in week 3? Continued to run the routes. You can see right here, he ran 43 routes. That was 83% of the routes, and this led to 8 targets and about 11 fantasy points for Musgrave. And if you watch the game, you know for the second time this season, he was just missed on what should have been another walk-in touchdown. The touchdowns are going to come for this guy. And his role is one of the best out of all the tight ends in the league. This is literally top 5 tight end usage right now. It's similar, if not better usage than what Sam Laporta is getting for the Lions, but Musgrave hasn't had the blow-up game that Sam Laporta just had, being the #1 tight end on the entire week, putting up 22 fantasy points. It was a great game, but Musgrave has the same exact usage, talent, and ability. And now if you look at the box score, you'll see Jordan Love only completed 50% of his passes, but like 5 or 6 of these were dropped, and he had a bunch of throwaways. And this is the stat line, 22 of 44, but he was also without his top running back, his top wide receiver, and his top 2 offensive linemen, and he's still able to produce a solid game and give Musgrave a good game of 11 points, and should have been even more at the touchdown. Imagine when he has all of his horses in the stable, if you will. So Musgrave is more than a pick up and play option. He's a guy you can start every single week, and this next guy is also becoming that. And that's Luke Musgrave's teammate, Jayden Reed, who's another weapon that has just been benefiting from improved play and overall play calling of the Packers and Jordan Love. Now, before week 3 began, through the first 2 weeks, Jayden Reed led the team, earning 22% of the targets and earning a target on 29% of his routes run. That would have ranked top 10 last year. This is elite usage. Simply put, Reed knows how to get open, and despite a really tough matchup against the Saints cornerbacks in week 3, he still earned 7 targets and 63 yards, and that doesn't even show you how good he actually played, because he made an incredible dive and catch late in the game, and then he just missed on a touchdown. The ball popped out as he came to the ground on what would have been another crazy catch. So in this tough matchup, he still earned a target on 26% of his routes run. He now ranks top 15, as you can see from my tweet right here, at earning targets per route. And this type of production isn't new to Reed. He earned 25% of his team's college targets and earned 39% of his college team's touchdowns. So make sure Reed is not on your waivers. And now we also must talk about another rookie receiver. And this is the Denver Broncos wide receiver, Marvin Mims, who, look, he's not a full-time player. He's barely even a part-time player, but we have to break him down. Because last week, he only ran 6 routes, just 6 routes run, was 5th on the team. And what does he do? He catches 2 deep passes, over 100 yards and a touchdown, 20 fantasy points. And I wasn't too high on adding the guy because it's just 6 routes run. Who knows what his role is? But then he saw his usage double this week. Now, he ran 12 routes in week 3, and he had a nice game. 5 targets on 12 routes is just fantastic as the wide receiver 4. 3 catches, 73 yards, adds a rush attempt, and brings back a 99-yard kickoff return. He's a playmaker. Now, as you can see from this PFF chart on the routes run in week 3, he's still well behind Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson ran 23 routes as the wide receiver 3 in week 3. Marvin Mims just 11 routes. it's 12 depending on where you're looking from your sources. But this being said, these are only going to continue for the rookie who was the first pick by Sean Payton ever as his coaching tenure with the Broncos. It's only going to continue to rise for Marvin Mims. And what he's doing with these deep passes from Russell Wilson is kind of sticky because that's what he did in college, averaging over 20 yards per catch, top 3% of all time. Okay, we have to discuss for the second straight week the veteran Adam Thielen, because look, this past game, this team, the Panthers and Andy Dalton, threw nearly 60 times. The Panthers fell behind early. Jonathan Mingo left the game, so that's another piece of competition that was out of the game for Adam Thielen. And again, they threw 58 times. Before the game started on Twitter, I put out this tweet about how Adam Thielen, he's good friends with Andy Dalton. He said a major reason why he joined the team was because Andy Dalton signed with the Panthers. And now last week, Adam Thielen scored 20 points. And this week, with so many pass attempts, he earns 14 targets and puts up over 30 fantasy points. Now, you could probably expect this usage to continue if Andy Dalton's in there, but you're not going to see 58 attempts. If that cuts in half, you're going to get like a 7 or 8 target game out of Thielen, which isn't bad. He's available in 50% of leagues, sure, but you're not going to get much upside. These aren't downfield targets. I actually think he's not worth spending much of your fab budget on or even a waiver claim. I'd rather have his teammate. And his teammate is DJ Shark, who in week 3, it was actually Shark's first fully healthy game. He was limited in week 2. He didn't play in week 1. And what does he do? Well, he also benefited from the massive passing. He earned about 20% of the targets, 11 targets, puts up 18.5 fantasy points, has some downfield usage as well. So if this team's going to trail a lot this year, yeah, both these guys are worth an ad, but I think there's a little bit more upside weekly with Shark. Now to a player who played on Thursday Night Football, and this is all about Kyle Shanahan actually telling the truth. He said after week 2, when Christian McCaffrey played 100% of the snaps, he can't let that happen again. He has to get other backs involved. And that's exactly what happened on Thursday Night Football. Before the blowout ensued, when it wasn't garbage time, you could see Elijah Mitchell's snaps go from no snaps week 2, just 15% of the snaps week 1, to then a season high 36% of the snaps, and he earns 14 opportunities in non-garbage time. Now, of course, Christian McCaffrey is still the best running back in fantasy, the running back 1 on this team, but this is important because it showed that Elijah Mitchell was the clear backup for McCaffrey. Because Jordan Mason saw his first snaps in the blowout in week 3, and that was only 4 total snaps that he's seen this entire season. So it's basically the Elijah Mitchell show as now the best handcuff in fantasy, yet he's available in 65 to 70% of leagues. And let me just remind you, in Elijah Mitchell's first 2 full seasons, he ranks top 10 in fantasy points per touch and 8th in running back efficiency. So make sure you go put a waiver claim in for Elijah Mitchell. If anything happens to McCaffrey, he's immediately a top 10 running back. And also be sure to acquire the fantasy blueprint, which means I'll be sending you something every single day of the week to help you win your matchup and get to your fantasy playoffs. You can see right here, Monday is waivers. That's coming out today, depending on when you're watching this. Tuesday, key stats database. Wednesday is the rest of season rankings, then projections and rankings for that week. And the game-by-game notes on Friday are very detailed. Every single game, absolutely in-depth, every matchup you can imagine. And the blueprint's simple to get. You just scan the QR code on the screen or just click the link in the description below to join the thousands of people currently using it. And look, here's the deal. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs, this is just $5 for the entire year, by the way, not just for the week or the month, the entire year. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I just refund that $5. So this is absolutely risk-free. You might as well have this extra tool in your toolkit each week to make sure you're setting your lineups properly and having the best team possible. So like I said, just click the link in the description below or scan the QR code to get your blueprint today. Now, another potential handcuff, like we just talked about Elijah Mitchell. Mitchell's a better option than Zeke, but Zeke is interesting in deeper leagues. He's worth a stash. He's available in 70% of leagues because he's now seen 15 or more opportunities in 2 of the first 3 games for the Patriots. They want to run the ball. You can see in week 2, in a pretty difficult matchup against the Jets, Zeke earns 17 touches, 87 yards, very efficient with over 5 yards per touch, and also he earned the 2-minute offense snaps over Ramondre, kind of surprisingly in this game. So he's one of the better handcuffs in fantasy because we know his team wants to run the ball, and if anything happened to Ramondre, he's going to immediately be a top 20 back, seeing 16 to 18 opportunities a game. Now, the next man up is Romeo Doubs, and I know we're talking about a lot of Packers, but I don't know who you have available in your specific league. Again, Doubs is available in 60% of leagues, despite just having a career best game. Now, in week 3, the Packers trailed 17-0 really early, and they basically trailed the entire game until the final couple of minutes, which led to more pass attempts, 44 for Jordan Love. And in turn, this led to Romeo Doubs earning 12 targets. He earned a target on 29% of his routes run. That was a career best, and it led to this solid game, and he actually should have had an even better game. He just barely missed a couple of other potential touchdowns in this game, making crazy catches the entire time over the shoulder down the sideline. Touchdown catch back shoulder at the end shows his chemistry and trust with the quarterback Jordan Love. And now this is the important point for Doubs. He already has 6 red zone targets this year and 6 end zone when he's standing in the end zone, meaning it's easier to get the touchdown. Yeah, he has 6 of those as well. This is where Jordan Love is looking when he gets to the red zone. So despite Doubs being like an average receiver, 6'2" and 204 pounds, he plays a lot lot bigger than this. Just type in Romeo Doubs week 3 highlights and you'll see exactly what I mean. Now, to finish up the talk about all these Packers, we have to at least give a little bit of shine to the quarterback that we've been hyping up and talking about here and there in Jordan Love. Look, CJ Stroud is your waiver option, but Jordan Love right now is a top 10 quarterback through the first 3 weeks in fantasy, and he's on all the waiver wires. Like I mentioned earlier, if you look at this, 22 of 44, 50% of your passes, that's atrocious. Yeah, but about 5 or 6 drops, and he threw at least 3 balls away. His true completion percentage was closer and slightly above 60%, and as you can see here, he finally flashed a mobile upside that keeps him as like a top 12 quarterback in a lot of weeks when the buys start to come in. 39 yards on the ground, a touchdown, 10 fantasy points alone on the ground. And he did this without Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, and his top 2 linemen. If CJ Stroud has gone off your waivers, especially when the buys start to come in, he is a very strong option. Now, this next guy might not be a strong option, but you might be in a bind, and if so, it's worth considering Matt Breida, who, look, in week 3 without Saquon, Breida goes out there and plays an elite 80% of the snaps. And now he doesn't actually have a crazy good game. In fact, it was a pretty bad game. 7 touches for just 18 yards. He gets saved by a touchdown, but they're facing a tough 49ers team on a short week on Thursday Night Football when he gets thrown into the starting lineup and they don't run the ball at all because they get down big. Again, only 4 carries here. But it is nice to see 80% snaps, and Saquon has admitted that he has a high ankle sprain, which is on average a 3-week recovery, so he's going to miss at least 1 to 2 more games. And the matchup only gets easier for the Giants next week against a poor Seahawks tackling team in their home, basically not favorites, but a 1-point underdog, so it's a coin flip game instead of being massive 10-point underdogs to the 49ers, maybe best defense in the league. So again, if you're in a bind, I think Matt Breida is going to grade out as like a top 30 running back for week 4. And the Ravens backfield is yet again in another injury situation because Gus Edwards left with a concussion. I mean, maybe he'll play. Justice Hill was banged up later in the week at practice. We don't know his week 4 status, so it could be Melvin Gordon in line or Justice Hill. One of these guys is an ad available in over 50% of leagues heading into week 4. Now, Melvin Gordon in this game was seeing usage even before Gus Edwards got hurt. 12 touches, 55 yards, nothing too crazy right there. But if he's indeed going to see more usage in week 4, you get some goal line touches out of him. He'll probably split some touches with another veteran in Kenyon Drake, who was actually active for week 3 but didn't see usage. It's not something I'm going to prioritize. Either him or Justice Hill will probably grade out as like my running back 35 on the week and a tough matchup on the road against a Cleveland division rival. But again, if you're in a bind and say like Matt Breida is not available and some of the other running backs we talked about in this video, at least track this Baltimore situation to see where the running backs are and who's going to start. Now, this is just one to keep in the back of your mind, and maybe if you have a roster spot, add him. Jamison Williams, we're less than a month away from the former first-round pick returning, and if you've watched the Lions team, they do need a downfield option. It's been at times a Josh Reynolds, at times the rookie Sam Laporta, but no consistent piece, which Jamison is. I mean, he's been far from consistent in terms of getting on the field in the NFL, but if we're talking about his college role and how that translates, he is the deep threat. And look, the Lions rank 5th right now in pass offense. Jared Goff is top 10 in deep targets. This is exactly where the #1 deep threat in college football 2 years ago can have some success, and he's available in over 90% of leagues. Now, this next wide receiver is available in deeper leagues, and then we'll go through a whole list of players who, if you're in a deeper league, you can find some options. And this receiver is the rookie Josh Downs, who actually won the job out of camp. I mean, he beat a veteran Isaiah McKenzie. That's pretty rare for a 3rd-round rookie. And heading into week 3, through the first 2 weeks, he ran 77% of the routes for this team, earned 15% of the targets, was operating basically as the wide receiver 2 in terms of earning targets over Alec Pierce. And then in week 3, he was Minshew's favorite target. A game that goes to overtime, he earns a team-high 12 targets from Gardner Minshew. So this is great to see, but the concern is that these are such short area targets. It's hard to have upside if you're not scoring touchdowns often. Just 8 catches for 57 yards, not being targeted deep. And when Anthony Richardson, the mobile quarterback, returns, he'll probably just opt to run instead of checking down to the slot receiver. So if you're in a 12-man league and you have deep benches, or definitely a 14 or 16, he's worth an ad. Otherwise, don't spend any fab here. Okay, now let's get into some of the other trending players on the fantasy waiver wires that maybe are actually available in your league if some of these other guys weren't. So now here's that huge list we talked about, and I'll just skim over the players we actually have already mentioned. Now, Trey Sermon actually had 5 carries. He had 8 opportunities in week 3, but he's clearly behind Zach Moss. I don't think he's worth an ad in anything more than like a 14 to 16 or deeper league. Same thing for Ronnie Rivers. Only got added a bunch on Sleeper, well, because Cam Akers gets traded away. He's now the backup running back. Got a lot of hype in camp as well. So again, deeper leagues only. I do think Matt Stafford's worth an ad. He'll play on Monday Night Football, depending on when you're watching this. Can just add him to your bench. I want him over CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, who we've already talked about. And now we can get to some other players we haven't really mentioned. Jalen Warren, you can see right here, he's rostered in 62% of leagues, so probably is in your league. But if he's not, this is a guy you need to add. Every day that goes by, they're saying, yeah, Warren's going to see more opportunities. Yeah, he's just been way better. And that's exactly what we're seeing in these games. Tony Jones, not really interested in. Actually held off the rookie Kendre Miller, but Alvin Kamara is returning. Nelson Aguilar only got added because he had a nice week too. 6 targets on 14 routes when Odell got hurt. But now with Odell probably going to be coming back soon, not as interested there. Robert Woods, worth a mention, 37% of leagues is all that he's rostered in. This is a guy that is definitely behind, in my opinion, Tank Dell and also Nico Collins in terms of the Texans wide receivers. But Robert Woods is going out there and he's earning the most snaps, the most routes. So if you're in a bind, I think if you're in a 12-man league, he should at least be added on some benches. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is available in 80% of leagues. That's a 14-man league or deeper, 12-man league if you have deep benches. He got picked up a lot this past week because they didn't know if Isaiah Pacheco was going to play. We can keep scrolling. We talked about a lot of these players. There's no way Tutu Atwell should be available in 35% of leagues. Fix that if he's available in your leagues. Craig Reynolds, you probably don't need him. Didn't see a lot of usage. It was a Jahmyr Gibbs show. We were told that on Saturday afternoon that it would be the Jahmyr Gibbs show, so you probably don't need much there. Talked about some of these other guys, really just some handcuff options in Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon, Kenneth Gainwell, available in over 50 or 40-ish% of leagues. I think Gainwell's the best option out of those plays. We talked about Marvin Mims. He's available in like 73% of leagues. Rico Dowdle's actually interesting. He scored a touchdown this past week. It's still Tony Pollard, 26 opportunities for Pollard, but if something happens to Pollard, they haven't signed anybody. There's not really anybody else for them to sign. An inefficient Leonard Fournette or like Darrell Henderson. They like Rico Dowdle. He's been with the organization for a while. He would be the direct handcuff there. If you have Tony Pollard in deeper benches, you should be adding him. And as you keep scrolling here, Josh Palmer, 95% of leagues, I expect a lot of waiver claims to go to him. Durham Smythe is now worth a drop after it was actually Julian Hill. Julian Hill played more snaps, ran more routes significantly than Durham Smythe. So Julian Hill in your deeper leagues is somebody that is worth looking into. Probably not a name that anybody really knows, but he seems to now have already taken over Durham Smythe out of nowhere, it seems. Chuba Hubbard, it's 15, 12-man leagues with deep benches. Josh Reynolds is okay to keep on your rosters for right now. Other than that, that's the top 50 trending players as of right now. Ronnie Bell, you don't need to be adding. I think Brandon Ayuk returns next week. 40% of leagues is where Sky Moore is at. I think he's worth an add. We saw Rashee Rice get a lot of garbage time usage, but when the game was actually close, it was Sky Moore, which it wasn't close for a while. They ran a lot, the Chiefs. It was Sky Moore seeing good usage. So now these are the players that you should add before week 4. Obviously, you can't add all the players we talked about, but whoever's available in your league, start to make some priorities. And now before week 4 approaches, you should also try and make some trades, because if you're not trading, you're not trying. And that video, once it releases on Tuesday this week, it's going to pop up right here. If you made it to the end and you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button as we push towards 100,000 subscribers, but also you'll benefit from seeing all my future content to help you schmack around your buddies.